Hello. Okay. This is a little discussion about Henry David Thoreau. You all did a little bit of work already trying to make sense of Resistance to Civil Government by Henry David Thoreau. And I appreciated everyone's comments. And so, wondering what that was, I just dropped my video camera. I am in honor of today, see, I've got this shirt on, t-shirt, Henry David Thoreau, simplify, okay? Just return to the basics, Thoreau was trying to say, which includes basics of the human soul, okay? So, yeah, all right. Well, let me just hit some points here. I think folks more or less get it, but there are some substantial points that I'm concerned that folks maybe didn't fully get a handle on. So let me start this way. If we were in class, I'd show you a little PowerPoint slide. And so I haven't figured out how to upload my PowerPoint onto Canvas yet. So we'll just scroll through it here on my computer. Yeah, all right, just like that. Yeah, okay, there we go. So you can see me and the PowerPoint. Okay. All right. Well, so the question that I gave you, it was, what is Thoreau angry about? What is he concerned that where folks maybe are falling short somehow as Americans in their duty as human beings? In their duty to realize their divine potential. So let me just give a little bit of history, basically, and I think this PowerPoint slide will map some of that out. Okay, so, yes, okay. I think we talked a little bit about Thoreau. I'll try to get in a little closer here. We talked a little bit about Thoreau at Walden Pond. He went out to nature to spend 2 years of his life to try to find out the basics of what truly matter in life. And he felt the best way to do that, as with many romantics, was to return to nature. So this is the site of his house when he lived at Walden, right there. Okay, and so this is a picture of Walden. I don't know about y'all, but if I could be out there all the time like that, to be immersed in such beauty, I would probably do it too. Okay, yes, and then this is also at his site, the site of his house at Walden. And this is a passage that actually comes out of a book that he wrote called Walden. And it's one of the most famous passages to come out of Walden. I'll just read it in case you can't see it. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. So he really, really is giving everything he has to try to understand the truth of his own life completely for himself. Okay, so he's there at Walden Pond, minding his own business. He and the pond and the trees and the birds and everything else. And then what happens is that he's dragged off and thrown in jail. And this is what Resistance to Civil Government is about, the essay that you just read. Thoreau was living at Walden. A jailer came and arrested him, threw him in jail because he wasn't paying his taxes. And this is where I think some folks may have gotten tripped up in their writing. Thoreau didn't avoid paying taxes because, it didn't have to do with the government, It wasn't out of some kind of free market enterprise kind of ideology. It had nothing to do with that. The concern primarily was that Thoreau was angry with the United States government for starting an unjust war with Mexico. He was not going to give his money to fund an unjust war. United States basically picked a fight with Mexico so that United States could add a huge chunk of Mexican territory when the Mexican-American War was finally settled. So many states in what is now the Southwest were added to the United States from Mexico. Those states include California, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Colorado, Utah, parts of Wyoming. I think that's about it. Huge chunk of territory. It came to the United States by way of this war with Mexico. And if that weren't enough, a lot of that land was going to come in and be added as slave territory to the United States. Mexico had abolished slavery at this time. United States had not. So Thoreau, as a lot of you mentioned, Thoreau was very much opposed to slavery and was appalled at the idea that the United States would fight an unjust war with Mexico to only to add to its slave territory. Okay? So he wasn't going to pay his taxes to support an unjust government engaged in such unjust pursuits. So dragged off and thrown in jail. Now, also, what's part of this whole story is his very long legacy as a prisoner of conscience. He went on to inspire the idea of, he just comes right out in resistance to civil government, that we have a moral obligation to break unjust laws. And so folks like Martin Luther King, we all know who King is. We celebrate a federal holiday every year. He broke unjust laws such laws that would call people of color second-class citizens. King was very much inspired by Thoreau's act as a prisoner of conscience. And Martin Luther King was not the only one. Mahatma Gandhi was one, okay? So Mahatma Gandhi, India was a nation that was an English colony during these years, 1869 to 1848. And Gandhi threw those oppressive colonial powers out in order to claim independence for India. And Gandhi drew heavily on Thoreau's ideas. Gandhi knew Thoreau's works. And then, of course, here we have Martin Luther King. I already mentioned him. And, of course, we all know who Martin Luther King is. Okay, so, all right. So, yes, and since those years, Thoreau has very much become an icon of resistance to injustice. In the Occupy Wall Street movement from about 8 years ago or so, those folks were drawing heavily on Thoreau. Anytime when folks see people who are very wealthy, who are very powerful, who are abusing their wealth and power, people will go back to Thoreau over and over again for inspiration. So this is a young person here, and this is a very recent photograph. Got a picture, this is a tattoo, I think you can see. This is Walden Pond here, and then this is Thoreau's house at Walden. So Thoreau for life. So young people today are very much being inspired by Emerson, or Thoreau, I should say. And here's another tattoo here. This is a quote right out of Thoreau, right out of Walden. And it says, "Morning is when I'm awake, and there is a dawn in me." this idea that Thoreau believed so strongly in the goodness of humanity, that if we can only tap into that goodness, that's an incredible, radical act of hope, that that goodness can be inspired to emerge in people, and that as that goodness emerges, that power can pour over then and bring about a greater sense of justice in this world. Okay, yeah. This one's a little more risque. This is another young person here with a Thoreau tattoo, and this comes right out of Thoreau. Walden, go confidently in the direction of your dreams and live the life you have imagined. That comes right out of Thoreau's Walden. Okay, well, there's also a video game. I won't take the time to pull it up. Just Google it if you really want to see Walden the video game. So my point in bringing all this up is simply to say that Thoreau continues to make his mark in popular culture. So, yeah, the first part of this lecture then is simply to indicate where, me again, is to indicate where Thoreau is identifying problems. And he's looking out around him and seeing so many Americans going along with such horrific injustice. He wants to reach out and grab people and say, what are you thinking? How could you possibly support such injustice? How can you believe such lies? How can you be so stupid, basically, to accept such horrific injustice? And he knows there's goodness within each and every one of us. And so he's trying to reach out to his readers and bring that out to the surface, so we act on our better angels. We'll act on what's good within us, as opposed to what's selfish or mean or unjust or racist or hateful. A part of us that would lie or not care about other people. That part of us who dislikes people who don't look like us or speak the same language. And yes, we see more than enough of this in our world today. And I think you know what I'm talking about, so I don't have to go on and on about that. Thoreau is speaking out against racial hatred in some. The injustice of rich people and the way they act out oppressively against people who are less powerful than they are. Okay, well, pull out your book here, and I'll just pull out a couple sections here so I can ground everything that I've been saying in some good textual evidence. So if you want to flip over to page 954. Okay, 954. Very bottom of 954, after that line of quotation here, I'm going to read this passage. The mass of men serve the state thus, not as men mainly, but as machines with their bodies. They are the standing army, the militia, jailers, constables, posse comitatus, etc. In most cases, there is no free exercise whatever of the judgment or of the moral sense. But they put themselves on a level with wood and earth and stones, and wooden men can perhaps be manufactured that will serve the purpose as well. So you see what he's getting at here? People who act on injustice, they're not fully living their lives as human beings hitting on all 8 cylinders. Thoreau is saying people who go out and act on unjust laws are simply machines. They're robots. I mean, we all know Star Wars, right? Think about all those stormtroopers, right? Or in Star Trek, the Borg, right? You do things because it's your duty and that's it. You've stopped, in Thoreau's mind, folks like that have stopped using their brains. They've stopped being able to see things for themselves. They've stopped being able to recognize in their heart of hearts what justice is, okay? How to make moral distinctions, how to tell truth from lies, right? Again, turn on the news. You see that problem is very much with us today. So many people don't understand how to make moral distinctions. So many people don't understand how to live with their hearts and their minds in combination with one another. This is what Thoreau is trying to teach us to do. He's reaching out and saying, I know you're better than being a lump of machinery here. The word robot didn't exist yet. That came from Czech, as in Czech Republic. But that's what he's talking about. Too many people act like robots, following orders of other people and not fully realizing that inner potential from within. Okay, and then so I'll just go on here. Yet such as these even are commonly esteemed good citizens, right? Others, as most legislators, politicians, lawyers, ministers, and office holders, serve the state chiefly with their heads. And as they rarely make any moral distinctions, they are as likely to serve the devil without intending it as God. Okay? So these are powerful words. These are powerful words, and they're every bit relevant today as they've always been. So these are the words that inspired people that went on to do even more remarkable things than Thoreau, and that's Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi. Martin Luther King, we know the story. It was like, oh, I'll be a good citizen. I'll discriminate against people of color, right? It's my duty and it's my right to discriminate. You know, Martin Luther King is saying, have you lost your mind? Where's your heart? How can you not recognize people of color as being human beings? It's time for y'all to become rehumanized, and you're going to do it now. And until you do, we're going to break these laws that discriminate against your brothers and sisters of color. Okay? So, all right. Well, let me end. This is part one. This is the problem that Thoreau is identifying. And in part two, I'm going to get into the solution. And the solution is where he's drawing on transcendentalism, okay? Something that you're already very familiar with at this point. Okay, stay tuned for part two.